if you think about growth marketing and sales becoming growth hackers, then what they will typically do is they'll find the weakest points in that pirate funnel and that customer life cycle. And then that helps you to grow your business more sustainably.
Funnel Visionaries.
Welcome to another episode of Funnel Visionaries, where we talk a whole lot of realness about the customer journey. I'm your host, Konrad Sanders, and today we're joined by the wonderful Louise Hamer-Brown, who has led marketing transformations for FTSE 100 brands like Marks & Spencer, all the way through to disruptive hyper-growth SaaS scale-ups. And in today's episode, weirdly, we create a remake of the TV show Emily in Paris. But more importantly, we discuss the pirate funnel, RRRR, and how to create a referral marketing program. So let's jump in. Louise, welcome to Funnel Visionaries. Thanks for joining me today. Happy Friday. Hope you're feeling good.
I am, yes, towards the end of the week.
Ready to be grilled about funnels and customer journeys.
I shall try my best.
I'm sure you do absolutely fine. So before we actually dive into the meat of the episode, I want to start with a little fun segment because I'm a fun guy like that. We like to call this Genie in a Bottle. So if I imagine I am your genie today and I can grant you one wish, but that wish must be something that you would change about the world of marketing, what would it be? What would you change?
That's a good question. There's a bit of a backstory to this as to why I would say this, I think. But if I could change one thing in marketing, I think it would be that we can be viewed as candy floss, so fluffy, pink, saccharine, sweet, and fun. So there's no real substance or value to marketing. And I think, although watching Emily in Paris is my guilty pleasure. She becomes an influencer overnight, even though she doesn't speak French, and she throws out English hashtags, and voila, every client is falling on this hashtag campaign and for her target market, for all her French clients. So it's just doesn't really help the perception of marketing, I don't think. But then, it does also reminds me of I had my own Emily in Paris experience once when I was working for a FTSE 100 company, and our CMO was adamant that we could only work with really big agencies, whether they really fitted our profile or our requirements or not. So we had a team in Paris as well as a team in the UK. So we all trudged off to this very famous agency in Paris, beginning with a P. The office is all decked out like a drugstore, so a bit confused sort of from the get-go, really. And they were presenting some customer case studies to us, so examples of some of their social campaigns. And after each demonstration of the campaign, they would say to us, and the client was very happy, and it was a great success. So naturally said, well, what were the objectives then? And we just got these really blank stares. And so we thought, well, maybe we're not being clear. So then we asked the same question a different way of, well, what was the client brief? And again, we were just met with these very blank stares. And then the penny dropped that because we were not the Paris team, that we just weren't that important to them, and they hadn't really prepared the right people to present to us. And we just weren't a very important client, I guess. So yeah, hashtag don't belong here. So yeah, that was my Emily in Paris moment.
Louise in Paris.
Yeah.
We should. There's a content idea.
Hasn't got the same ring to it, I don't think. Louise is a French name as well, of course. It's an old farming traditional French name.
There you go. I've learned something new today.
Yeah.
Not about marketing, but it's just to add to the richness of this podcast. I think it is. We get a bad rep, don't we? It's kind of sad. A lot of agencies and marketers give us a bad rep, and I find that frustrating. But I suppose it allows people like you and I to differentiate by actually focusing on on results, objectives and results, and kind of blending the science of marketing with the art as well, the creative side of things with the actual, objectives, customer journey mapping, funnel planning, things like that, which is a segue to my first main question. Obviously, we're called Funnel Visionaries. We like to talk about and get, it's real talk on the customer journey. And I know that you've got some beef, shall we say, with the traditional funnel, the way that a lot of marketers talk about and apply and use the funnel. So I'd like to ask you, what's wrong with the traditional funnel?
Well, yeah, as you say, I'm a firm believer that we should move away from the traditional funnel, kind of maybe almost rip it up and throw it away. So move away from that approach, and instead we should focus on the whole buyer journey. So the pre-sale and the post-sale customer journey, so it's fully integrated and becomes an end-to-end customer journey. And the reason I say that is because when sales, marketing, and customer service are fully aligned, you get a much deeper relationship, much more unified, seamless experience to the customer. And that ultimately means that the customer's going to be more loyal to you. They're going to be a better customer to you if you treat them the right way. So you need to look at them holistically as a team and not at just your particular silo or point in a funnel. You're not handing something over, right, move on. That's never really worked in marketing, I don't think.
Do you find that, and first of all, I 100% agree with you, and we were talking about this just pre-recording, that we feel the same way, and we talk about the full funnel or the full customer journey. That's why I prefer to actually say customer journey than funnel, because it's beyond just what a lot of marketers think their remit is, right? Just get them to the sales team or even get them to that sale point. It's like after the fact, maximizing customer lifetime value should be one of the key metrics within growing revenue. What I was going to ask is, because I know you've worked in FTSE 500 companies, large companies, and currently working
startups,
with helping to grow startups and scale ups, etc. We also work with a kind of a mixed bag. Do you find it's trickier to achieve that sort of full funnel approach with larger companies, because they're often more siloed at that stage than with, like, say SaaS startups?
Yeah, I find them all equally siloed. Typically, larger companies got slightly better process, and they do have process owners, which you don't tend to get so much in startups. So you still get misalignment either way. But what I've tended to do is introduce this notion of the 3A3R framework, which is also known as the pirate funnel, because it's 3 A's, 3 R's. R. I can't do very good. I sound more like a farmer.
I was hoping.
It's more like a farmer funnel.
A French farmer, maybe.
And that funnel approach is kind of a hybrid in that it is actually a customer journey, but it's laid out in this kind of funnel approach of you've got awareness at the top of the funnel, you've got acquisition, retention, revenue, and referral. So it actually maps kind of slightly more traditional funnel thinking against the customer journey, but it's a customer journey in pirate disguise, I guess. And that really does help this sort of new notion of growth marketing rather than just marketing. So traditional marketing, you'd be at the top of the funnel, and as you say, you qualify your leads, marketing qualified, hand them over to sales as for sales to qualify, and you're going through several layers of qualification. But with this funnel, actually growth marketing is linked to that journey. And so you're involved in every stage of that customer life cycle. You might have specialists at different ends of that journey, but you're more aligned also as a marketing team. So if you've got customer marketing versus the new business team, you are now aligned as well, because you're all part of that same journey and function. So if you think about growth marketing and sales becoming growth hackers, then what they will typically do is they'll find the weakest points in that pirate funnel and that customer life cycle. And then that helps you to grow your business more sustainably because you're identifying gaps in the whole experience, not just trying to fix something at one end.
Yeah, no, it's such a smart approach. And do you find there is how easy is it to kind of introduce this concept? I guess to, again, whether it's a startup or a larger company, like is it met with resistance because marketers think, well, that's not my job. My job is to get leads.
I think in more modern business models, it's a lot easier. So if you've got a freemium or a free trial or a monthly subscription business model, then I think this is so relevant. It makes sense to work this way. So I think if you're thinking about your business model already and reinventing, then this is quite an easy adoption. So if you think about activation, so quite often the weak points might be activation, which is, after the awareness phase. You can see that perhaps in your data that your customers aren't using your product, or they're not using it regularly, or they're not repeat visiting it, or they're not converting from like a freemium model or free trial to a paid model. Then that actually that funnel is really valuable, and you can see that you've got a weakness there. Same with retention. It's very easy to apply if they cancel their subscription. Why is that happening? Or if it's a revenue weak point, you're not generating the revenue that you'd forecast. You can see, well, actually it's because there's no upsell or cross sell to new premium features or products or services, because actually it's not the right customer journey. So if you're not expanding your accounts as they mature, again, you can see that in that life cycle approach, which they would probably be complete blind spots otherwise if you were just really focused on handing over to the next person.
Yeah, I think also with that life cycle marketing, growth marketing, etc. approach, if there's that sort of feedback loop, that communication between the teams, the different functions, then then the marketers who are, let's say, focused more on top funnel, bringing leads in, ideally are bringing the right type of leads in, right? The type that are more likely to convert, more likely to spend more money. Otherwise, without focusing on the end goal of growing revenue, they could be bringing in duds, right? If there's no sort of transparency sort of across that entire journey, they could be going, oh, I've hit my lead quota. There we go, job done. But are they converting? Are they spending money? So talking about that, obviously this whole approach involves different teams and team members kind of working together to focus on growth and revenue. Any sort of, I suppose, advice for how to facilitate that, like how to get teams to kind of work together within a, let's say, like within a SaaS sort of startup or scale up?
Yeah, what I tend to do is make sure that actually don't forget the customer. They're part of this too. We're quite good at doing that. So think about what are the customer proof points? What's the feedback you're getting? Have you got feedback points that are actually informing, for example, your churn risk? Have you got the right processes and opportunities in place? Because if the customer's telling you that there's a problem, then you need to hear it and you need to receive it and you need to act upon it, and it will explain a lot of your problems. We're very good, I think, at saying, oh, well, customers are saying this, but they're not really applying it. Closing feedback loops is my another big bugbear. What's the point of sending me a survey if you're not going to do anything about it? People just don't then bother, because when you actually get a response from someone, you're like, wow. So that's just as important a part of that whole customer experience and that journey with a brand or a company. So I guess for me, making sure you don't forget at the bottom of the funnel as well, that referral element. I think that's something that I find people miss a lot. I think probably more in B2B than B2C, but probably in both to some measure. And we forget actually that advocacy is the kind of reward. It's the outcome if you've nailed all the other steps beforehand. They've had a good onboarding experience, they've adopted your product or services, they've continued to buy them, so you've retained them, and then they've actually said, I love it so much, I want to buy more, I want to use more of your features and functions. Then that trusted referral from that advocate who's had a really good experience is like gold, really. It carries much more weight than a cold sales pitch or outreach that hasn't really been requested, or even air cover campaigns. It's much more relatable, and so it's highly effective. And in B2B, we don't really tap into that enough. We invest heavily in digital performance marketing at the top of the funnel, so that customer acquisition piece, but we forget that actually referral is a really good way to acquire more customers. So we don't incentivize them nearly enough.
I think it's a brilliant point. One thing that we like to talk about in our own version of talking about funnels is we call it AFFU, the after funnel stage of the customer journey. Right. And that's exactly the area you're talking about. And one thing I'd like to bang on about to clients is, not just maximizing customer lifetime value by, reducing churn, etc. But yes, referral marketing. What can we do at that area to encourage referrals? Because as you said, they're sort of truth aware, right? To add a new stage of awareness. They know what's going on. And if you've got great products and services, they're going to be the best advocates. And other prospects are more likely to buy from you if they've heard from people like them. As you said, kind of proof points, social proof, etc. So I'd love to sort of double down on this idea, or focus on this idea of referral marketing, because I think it's not something we've talked about on the podcast yet, and it should be,
because it gets forgotten.
Exactly, it gets forgotten, and it's part of the RRRR framework, and I love that it's there. It's part of it, like that, a key focus on it, so you can't forget it because it's there in the acronym. So, can you give me some examples of? I mean, you kind of alluded to the fact that B2B tend not to capitalize on it as much as B2C, but what are some brands, either B2B or B2C, that have done well with referral marketing that we can kind of learn from? We can take a leaf out of their book, perhaps.
Yeah, there are some really good examples out there. Again, it's quite new thinking, I think. So they tend to be younger companies who have, unicorn companies now because they've done so well. But you think about Airbnb, think about Dropbox, PayPal, dare I say it, Tesla. They've all got really good referral programs. So for them, advocacy is not just an afterthought, it's actually core to their strategy, and that's I think has made a big difference. So Tesla give you like special rewards, you can get factory tours, money can't buy experiences really, invite only events, that kind of thing. So it's very experiential, and that's reinforcing that sort of loyalty, but it's also driving the upsell cross-sell piece too, and effectively new business too, because you can have events where your customers are kind of hosting your prospects. That's very powerful, that whole sort of customer to customer lens. Airbnb apparently saw a 300% increase in bookings per day by offering credits to your Airbnb account that you could then put towards your next stay. So what was good about this, I think, was that they're able to focus on their business model as well. So they could do bigger rewards for hosts than for guests, because they, without hosts, you can't have guests. And that helped them with their whole business model and their supply and demand chain, because as we know, trying to get hosts is always the more, trying to get your product where it needs to be to meet demand is always the biggest challenge. So it helped them to manage it in a really balanced way. And then in the tech space, I mentioned Dropbox, who famously scaled from 1 million, I think it was, users to 4 million in the space of a year. They used a kind of refer a friend and get more space program, which was kind of spacey and sci-fi. So that resonated really well, basically giving a bit of your product away at very low cost to get those early adopters on board, knowing that would then create this referral wave. Whereas PayPal, they just gave away money, which I know we can't all do that, can we? And they still do that.
But everyone wants money, so.
Well, they awarded me £5 the other day. I'm very pleased to tell you. Maybe it's because they heard me talk about pirates and they think I like a bit of treasure.
Yeah, I'd like to know what you're going to spend that £5 on, or maybe you've already spent it.
Not yet. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant examples there. Uber too, I think, did like, from what I remember, at least at the beginning, like beginning of their world takeover, there was that kind of was it £10 off or a free trip? If you maybe you the referee gets a free trip and the referrer gets a free trip. I think that was it. But I remember being, I think, probably in my 20s, just like wanting to jump on that because you want to save money left, right, and centre. So referral marketing. Okay, these were all really brilliant B2C examples, and as you've already kind of brought up, it's overlooked even more so in the B2B world. Have you got any sort of ideas for how B2B brands, I suppose it's like, let's say SaaS or even agencies and consultancies can sort of capitalize on referral marketing, ways for them to sort of take a leaf out of the book of some of these, global unicorns that we've mentioned?
There are some B2B examples. Arguably Dropbox is also B2B tech, but Slack also did a very similar thing where they used a lot of social campaigning. They got all their staff in their teams to also start talking about collaborating on Slack. So there are some B2B examples, but they're fewer of them, I think. And there is a slowness to adopt that, what is ostensibly a B2C kind of way of thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
And they do tend to focus more on the top of the funnel and generating those leads. So although there are some examples, I guess the compelling argument here is that you have to think about, okay, so how much at the moment in B2B marketing is not getting the best ROI because everybody's doing the same thing. Everyone's focusing on that performance marketing, that customer acquisition and awareness, air cover campaigns, at the top of the funnel. And it's becoming a bit like white noise, really. Also, I think there's a nervousness around AI generated content. So you're not getting that really truly authentic content. So it becomes a bit like snake oil salesman. Why should I believe anything that you're putting in front of me? You probably haven't generated that content yourself. That's auto generated. I'm speaking to bots, not people. There's lots of issues, I think, around doing that now that B2B marketers are a little bit slow to address. So I guess the way that I would frame it is that if you're using user-generated content, for a start, it's authentic and it's real. And there are lots of really good sites that do this, like Gartner or G2. There's lots of review sites. So that's not new. It's how you apply it and actually incentivize it. So don't leave it to a third party to incentivize it. You can run your own referral programs if you've got happy customers. They want different outcomes from it. So if they're the CEO or a director level, then they want to be seen as an expert in their field. They want to be a spotlight on them, showcase their success. It's very much about their career profile.
Yeah.
Whereas they're perhaps an admin user, it's more about incentivizing them through those experiences or gifting, things that they perhaps wouldn't normally get to buy or experience in their everyday life. So there's different ways of approaching the needs of the customer. So you need to understand what their drivers are if you're going to really incentivize them.
Yeah.
But it's much more cost effective to do that. To incentivize them to refer. And that they're referring to like-minded people like them. They're not just plucking names out of a hat. It's someone they know is probably already in the market and they've been talking to them. I mean, think how many times on WhatsApp group or social media you get asked, does anybody know someone reliable to do this for me? It's the same way of thinking. So actually that lead that's generated from that referral is already qualified in a way. It's a really good quality lead. As we were saying earlier, it's quite easy to generate leads, but generating quality leads that are going to convert, is the true magic. So you can waste a lot of money generating leads that never go anywhere. Whereas through a referral, it's quite cost-effective way, because if you're giving an experience or a bit of your product, there's not a huge cost associated to that if you've modeled it correctly. And then they're going to convert through your sales funnel very quickly. And I think the reason that B2B businesses are a bit afraid of doing that is because in B2C, you're talking about huge volumes of contacts, right? Your big campaigns. In B2B, your volumes are much smaller. And so there's still that fear of, is it going to drive enough leads at the top of my funnel? Rather than thinking, is it going to drive enough qualified leads in the middle of my funnel? Which is why I think we should throw funnels out the window, because that's incentivizing the wrong behaviors, the wrong thinking, and spending money in the wrong way.
I've got several follow-up questions. I'm trying to work out which direction to go first. All kinds of thoughts popping into my head. I'll start with the fact that actually, obviously we're an agency, and I network and mingle with many other agency folks, and referrals are the and there's data to support this, like the main way that most agencies actually get business, right? But not many of them are actually doing referral marketing or actually going, right, this is how we get business. So let's think of a way to incentivize. Let's build some structure and process and strategy around it, sadly. But, they're just kind of waiting for it to happen. It's almost making me think about our own referral marketing. And there's probably some leaky pipes there in our home, so to speak.
I would always tap up my network if I was looking for a new agency. I would always prefer to get a recommendation from someone in my network that I knew was really good at what they did. Why would you not do that? I view you as a bit of an expert on this. I need a really solid agency that's going to help me with this to really drive my business forward, and therefore I'm not going to make a risky choice based on minimal data. I'm going to go to that person who I know, I really respect their opinion. Maybe they even taught me half the things I know. Of course I'm going to listen to them.
Absolutely. And I guess by incentivizing and rewarding the referrer, not only are you bringing in new leads that are more likely to convert, like hot sort of leads into the top of the funnel, but you're also probably helping to retain them for longer. You're helping them, you're giving more value to the client or the customer. So there's a retention part in there. It all kind of fits into that, what we call AFFU, that post-sale crucial section that is often missed. I'd like to give a quick shout out to one of our clients, Hi Bob, who are really smashing it in the HR tech world, doing very well as a scale up, because they do a brilliant job with their sort of AFFU stage as well. So they throw events and have a whole community, a sort of Slack channel and things like that for their bobs, for their clients, and incentivize referrals, and they're, as again in the B2B world, doing a really good job of that. But back to my questions. You mentioned the motivations of those customers, and you said that there's no one size fits all solution for incentivizing referrals. How would you go about kind of helping brands, let's say in the B2B world, understand the motivations of their customers in order to sort of create the right incentives to not just become an advocate, but push referrals?
Yeah, you profile all your customer base. So you can do quite simple segmentation, or you can do pretty complex segmentation, but the customer journey will help you do that. That's the beauty of it. So yes, you might say, look at the size of this company, and you know that the level of responsibility of the person in that business is going to be this because they're a big or they're a small company. But you'll also look at typically at the company's customer journey and how they're using your products and what they're using your products for. So you've already got a lot of insight. You've got a lot of first party data that's in your CRM. And it's a case of how you actually unlock that. I think that's where companies struggle, probably both a little bit B2B and B2C, but certainly more B2B, is how do you unlock all that data that's so rich in there, and how do you apply it to your marketing practices? CRM data can quite often be quite difficult to lift and can be a bit out of date and not maintained if you haven't got proper customer journey touch points that are informing that data. So again, any old model data from a funnel is not very helpful at all post sale. It's just structured around their sort of contract arrangements with you, which isn't going to give the marketeer any insight. So using the touch points through that funnel is going to give you that insight, so you understand what the motivations are. And I think I don't want to go into huge detail around ABM and ABX, but it's kind of unavoidable as a mainstay of modern customer marketing and modern marketing practices. You've hopefully built up quite a lot of engagement data through your relationship with how they've interacted with your campaigns and your events and what they're interested in. So I would make sure that I'm creating clusters and segmentation around what would be their sort of drivers and motivations for not just using your products and services, but as them as individuals. And I have known in companies past, when you've really done really good high quality ABX, where you've actually really looked into that customer profile and their activity, and if there are any sort of causes that they champion, for example, that they're passionate about, and you've been able to say, okay, for this particular customer, I think making a charitable donation to that cause is going to be a primary driver for them giving me something in return. It is a value exchange at the end of the day with anything, isn't it? If you want something from a customer, whether it's their personal data or whether it's to get them to talk about your product, then you have to have that value exchange. And I've seen that work even with brands where, for example, sports sponsorship. If you're a sports brand, that person can't recommend your company with their logo against it, because their main stream of income is sponsorship. So what they do is they'll do it as an individual and not talk about their company name. And I think that shows you that you've got that value exchange right. If they're willing to do that, they're actually putting their name against something and saying, I really think this is a great product or service and I recommend it to others. It's quite a long answer to your question.
No, but I think it's fascinating because it's such a deep dive into this area that we keep saying, as I keep to sound like a broken record, is often just missed in a sense. It's not focused on, but there's so much you can do by really diving into the data. And I suppose all of that work at truly understanding the motivations of your actual current customers and segmenting by different buyer personas and profiles, etc. All of that kind of work would not only help to feed hopefully a very successful referral marketing strategy or program or campaign, and I want to talk about that in a second, the differences between those, but also that's brilliant. Of course, that's brilliant data to feed into whoever's taking care of top, middle, bottom funnel, if we want to use those terms, your messaging, your copy, because at the end of the day, we want to attract more people like them. So the more we know about them, the better we can do when it comes to content marketing at the top of the funnel to grab attention, motivate them to take that next step in the customer journey. Because like you said, even the value exchange, if we want to turn them into MQLs at some point, you want them to give you their contact details. No one really wants to hand over contact
No.
details willy-nilly, so there has to be a value exchange. And the more we can know about them, their pains, their desires, their needs, what makes them tick, the better kind of content marketing we can create, the better copy we can write on our landing pages, even on our homepage, and so on and so forth. So I guess what we're trying to say is, like, do your research, get that data.
Yeah. Use your CRM tools effectively against your customer journey.
So one thing that you've said to me in the past is kind of, you've talked about the difference between, let's say, a campaign and a program or a strategy. So one thing again one of my pet peeves about the world of marketing is when it's just sort of campaign-led marketing, is marketers that just focus on, oh, we're going to do a campaign now for this quarter. There's a standalone piece of work, whether this is sort of whatever part of the customer journey this is. And then it's just forgot about, and then they move on. They're kind of looking forward and not looking back. So what would you say is the difference between sort of a campaign and a program? And how would you go about instilling let's say a referral marketing, if you want to call it that, sort of program with your clients?
So you hear a lot about integrated campaigns. I remember when everyone was talking about integrated campaigns, and you're right. A campaign has a very specific purpose. So it's to get people to sign up to my event, for example, and it has a very specific start date and a very specific end date and a very specific set of objectives against it. It's a one-off activity. A program is more strategic, so it's addressing a long-term need. So you think about a loyalty program. You'll have lots of campaigns within that loyalty program. That loyalty program is kind of an always on. And I've heard people talk about always on campaigns, and it's like, well, that kind of sounds like it might be a program. Or drip feed campaigns. These are programs that run for a long time. They'll have multiple campaigns, multiple touch points, multiple channels in them. And I think people get confused because an integrated campaign has multiple channels as well. But a program would be an always-on activity, really. It's not something that you would say, right, am I going to run this in June? And I think that's the key difference. And programs are therefore much more strategic because they're solving a problem or a long-term business need. They're driving sustainable growth, whereas campaigns will drive growth for that particular period of time or that particular activity.
Do you, again, back to sort of similar question to I asked earlier on in the episode, how easy or hard is it to kind of get the marketers you work with, marketing managers within a company, to get on board with the program approach or like a longer term strategy rather than just following this campaign-led approach, which again, if that's been the culture of the company and that's what they're used to, have you found it tricky to sort of educate them and move them in that right direction?
I'm just going through the process of that very thing right now. And I think when you line it up against your strategic priorities, they can understand the difference. But if we talk about, so let's put it into the context of a referral program for now. We want it to be cost effective. It's something that's got to be a continuous, like a loyalty program almost. And so it's got to be a continuous loop of customer engagement. So rather than asking for a Trustpilot review, which is very interaction focused, it's transactional, that's the word I'm looking for, or sending a passive survey and then thinking, right, well, I've done that. I've asked them to give me a review. I've done my referral piece. That's a one-off touch point. What you would do with a program is, okay, you'd look at that data and say, anyone that's given me a really good NPS score, I'm now going to follow up with them. I'm going to close that loop and I'm going to put them into my referral program. So actually that campaign is an entry point. It's the beginning. It's certainly not the end. And then you would close loop that feedback. So you would actually respond to it. You would tag them in your database as having particular preferences or ways of thinking. This is what they enjoy, so we need to do more of that for this customer. So you prolong that sort of positive experience with them, and you start to build that relationship. So when you're aligning your kind of customer advocacy programs and referral programs to the customer experience, you're not just adding leads to the top of your funnel, you're building that long-term trust and loyalty. And that's sustainable growth, because that gives you a really solid base to keep growing on. It's not this sort of transient top of funnel constant flow. It's actually building the trust and loyalty. And as you said, you'll then start to look at it through the lens of customer lifetime value. So you've already got that revenue, it's already there, you just need to keep it. And then you can start to expand and grow it over time. And then you start to be able to value your company much more accurately than you could before. So for me, I think when you look at it that way, it demonstrates it's much more valuable to run programs such as referral programs than one-off campaigns.
Yeah, I'm writing notes down now for us as an agency. Before I was writing potential questions to ask, but yeah, it's definitely inspired me to think more about our own referral marketing program. And again, I'd probably say we probably don't have a program in place. We do some referral marketing. We do off the back of our NPS score. We have got some process in place, but I think it could be a lot more robust, and we could be thinking more long term. So it's really interesting stuff. I guess also by actually building a long term program rather than these shorter term wins or one off campaigns, it also allows you to do things like A/B testing. There's more data over time to test the incentives, but even test the messaging around what those incentives are, the copy, the content. And I think that's one of the beauties about always on, or just what I would call a strategy or a program, or, kind of building something that is not just going to last for 3 months and then move on to the next shiny thing. So really fascinating stuff. I guess final question for you, Louise. I always like to end on a future-based question. Do you have any sort of thoughts? Obviously, we touched on AI slightly, which is a hot topic at the moment for good reason. Any thoughts about the future of kind of post-sale marketing? And we can obviously laser in on referral marketing programs, but any ideas about where it might be headed, or sort of trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think the thing that and it's sort of actually already started to happen, is thinking about, I'm going to the top of the funnel, the beginning of the customer journey now, that kind of awareness piece, which is obviously very much linked to referral. I'm thinking about how, with the advent of AI, search has really changed. I mean, I personally really enjoy it. It's going to be much richer insight into my search requests. But that is leading us down this path of this sort of new, more conversational marketing. So things like the advent of communities, AI is surfacing that data ahead of just paid for sponsorship links. I mean, that's not going to go away, because obviously that's how Google monetize their platform. But in terms of things like TikTok, I mean, we've all been used to when YouTube became a way to search. There's always new channels that are emerging as search tools, and so search engines are always adapting. And again, that AI generated content is not going to get you in that search result. It's not going to surface the richness of data, because AI is now able to do that. So instead of getting maybe this fits with your search criteria, you're now getting whole conversations from platforms like Reddit, for example. So you need to kind of rethink your content strategy a little bit to make sure it is a bit more AI resistant or compliant from a search perspective, that it is a bit more user generated and a bit more authentic and verified, because you can't just necessarily buy your way to the top anymore. And I think that's great for the way that I see the business landscape changing, particularly in Europe. I was seeing, I forget the term for it now, but we're seeing lots of, you can probably remind me on this, we're seeing lots of smaller businesses and startups rather than these big sort of behemoth companies, owning everything now. We're seeing lots of like artisan gin, for example, I think is a good example of that. So we're seeing this new trend to smaller companies that are servicing specific needs. And I think, they don't have massive marketing budgets, and they're never going to be able to combat Amazon's ability to take over space on the internet. So this new way of searching and discovering, I think, is really beneficial to those that don't have massive marketing budgets behind them. And I'm really interested to see how this plays out and where it goes.
I wish I had more time. I could just jump on this point. I've got so much to say. But yeah, I share that. I'm also very interested. I feel like, traditional Google search almost feels prehistoric in a way now, like that you've got one line to try and say maybe a long tail keyword, and
maybe this keyword fits your search.
Yeah, exactly. It's still fit for purpose for some types of searches. When I'm looking for a brand, I think, in my opinion, a lot of especially like the top funnel basic SEO content, there was far too much of it. There is still far too much of it online, flooding every orifice of the web. That will be less valuable. The kind of, what is a copywriting agency? What is a copyright? that basic SEO content, because we'll use LLMs, we'll use ChatGPT or Google overviews to answer those basic questions, in a lot more depth than and much faster and quicker. So I think that, as you said, when it comes to content strategies, it's more about authenticity, expertise, like a deep dive. And if I have more time, I would talk about my own customer journey of buying a laptop recently, where it was a combination of the two. I used ChatGPT for the basic questions, and then I went and found an expert who was sharing their own usage of like making music on a laptop and things like that. So it's just the customer journey is changing, and we need to adapt as marketers. I think that's the sort of quick conclusion. But thank you so much for joining, Louise. It's been really, really interesting stuff. I've got loads of ideas about how we're going to patch up our own referral marketing efforts. So I really appreciate it. I hope you've had fun.
I have. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really insightful, and it's good to talk through these things with another like-minded expert like yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoy all of these episodes. I get so much value just personally, let alone hopefully the listeners too. But thanks again, and have a lovely weekend away.
Thank you.
Cheers, Louise.
Funnel